So we're going to have to start figuring out what we're going to do about all this rust and how much metal we're going to replace and what we're going to try to keep. So the first thing you need to do is figure out exactly how this is all put together. And this is actually kind of interesting. I've spent about a half hour this morning already studying it, looking at the other side, which is rusted out more so I can see a little bit more. But what it appears to be is the way they built this truck is the bed of the bed comes back and it came back, and this is part of the bed. This piece right here, and then this piece overlaid here, spot welds here, and then when they started putting the cab pieces on, the cab pieces just came down, and then they were spot welded along the bottom here. Kind of interesting. Would have never done or guessed anybody would do that, but maybe that's why these are kind of notorious for rust, because it would just allow the water to lay right in there. So anyway, it's a unibody construction, so the main frame rail runs right under here, so there's going to be some spot welds here. This piece runs down and ends right here, so this is a single piece here. It actually folds down under, so the spot welds are underneath and spot welded into the wheel well here. I haven't decided if I'm going to go that far. I don't think I want to take this whole thing apart. That's more work than I think is necessary. The other thing that's kind of interesting is there's three pieces here. So even in the bed of the truck, there's a main bed piece that goes across, but it ends here. So it ties into the subframe here, ends here, and then there's this other piece here that's about 6 inches wide that is underneath. So it's tacked here. And then there's this filler piece here. So my gut says what they're doing here is they figured out a way, because these were vans as well. So my money says they were kind of trying to be cute so they could figure out a way to use as many common pieces. So my money says this is van, this is van. And the reason this doesn't go all the way out is because the van had a separate piece out here that went the full length of the van, where the truck had this little filler piece to do the corner of the cab. I mean, that's my guess, but it's kind of what it looks like, which, from a rust point of view, the more joints you have, the worse it is. So that's the floor. And then here is kind of interesting. What they did is, from looking at the other side, what I believe this is happening is, if you come out to the outside, this body panel, right? See, this body panel is separate here, just over the wheel well. I believe this panel comes up, it's folded, goes in, and it's not just a little ledge. I believe, we'll find out here in a little bit when I start pulling it apart, is that fold comes all the way over, and then this is part of that fender right here. So this whole shelf is part of that lower body panel. And then when they put the cab down on top, they tacked this upper panel here. In the same way, I believe this other body panel back here comes in. You've got your fold in, and I believe this right here is actually part of that body panel as well, which is interesting, and I'm going to have to figure that out. But then that makes this like a cap piece right here. I thought this was a multiple pieces, but I think this is part of that one body panel. This is part of the other body panel, and then this is the only piece. So I'm going to strip the rest of this insulation off and start drilling some spot welds and try to get that off. The other thing I want to take off is pulling these spot welds here, because I want to take this panel off here, because I got to get behind to figure out how bad the rust is back in. And the bottom of this is gone here, so I'll have to be making a patch panel to extend that back down all the way, and this whole back area here needs to be dug out, blasted, and a bunch of metal replaced. So let's get started.
One of the comments from a friend of mine yesterday was make sure to emphasize the importance of this safety equipment. There's no point in restoring these cars if you're not going to be able to see or hear or breathe after you get done. So
So a couple things to note is I do run my grinder without the guard a lot. It's just too difficult to get into some of these areas without it. I always have my gloves, long sleeves, and as you can tell, they have saved my skin many times from slips with the grinder and various other things. So very important to always wear good gloves and long sleeves and just be very careful. The other thing is, for these wire wheels, I have actually pulled these wires out of my clothes, out of my skin. So I always buy these out of my local welding shop. I never go cheap on the wire wheels. And I never go cheap on cutting discs either. I always get the good stuff from the welding supply store. All right, so let's go get a screwdriver and see if I can get those things out. Not surprising, they're being stubborn. So when you dig out the impact driver, I'm kind of embarrassed to show you this, but I bought this thing, man, it's probably been 40 years ago. Kmart brand, but it's worked ever since. All right, that cover's off, doesn't really show me much. I have no idea why they put that cover on there. It could have just been this piece, but effectively, this was the last piece that went on. Spot welded, and spot welded here. Just kind of ties this whole corner together. This side, I don't think I'm going to tear this all out of here. It is rusted out here. I think this is supposed to come all the way down here. But I think I can get this cleaned up, blast it out, cut that out, stop the rust, make a couple patch panels. I think that can all be done in the car. What I was trying to figure out is how this is connected. Now that I got it cleaned out, it can get in there. It's not connected. So it's just these spot welds and whatever's left of spot welds along here. So that's my next thing. I'm going to drill out all those. Try to get this panel out of here on both sides. This is actually a really good panel to explain the spot welds. Sometimes they're really hard to see, but on this panel, very simple. So there, 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 and there. So sometimes you can take a piece of sandpaper, run over it, and it'll actually highlight them. Sometimes you have to sand it with a sander, wire brush, but eventually you get them down far enough with enough sanding, usually you can find them. So what I do is I drill a little pilot hole right in the center. That way that the blare cutter doesn't wander around. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So this is my go-to set for cutting spot welds out. This is my old CP air drill. I've had that guy for 40 some years. And there's a couple ways to go with the spot weld cutters. These are Harbor Freight. You can buy them cheap, but you get what you pay for. So what happens with these usually is they're hyper brittle, and all you have to do is catch one of these teeth once, and you see it'll snap the tooth off. The minute that happens, they start to walk and wander, which is why I drill pilot holes. I used these for a while, got frustrated with them. Back in the day when I was a GM mechanic, I used to put a lot of trunk racks on. That tells you how long ago that was. But I always had a blare cutter. So I got, these are just off from Amazon. It's a kit, 11196. It comes with just a fancier version. But it has a drill in the middle that's spring loaded. These still can walk. I still rather at least put a small indent with a pilot hole. Not reversible, but this will last 10 times longer. I don't think I've ever actually broken one. This kit comes with, I think it comes with one, it's been a while. I think it comes with 3, and this is empty and you load it. But what's interesting is I went to buy replacement cutters, and it turns out it's cheaper to just buy the whole kit over again. So those are my go-to tools for doing this, so let's get started. I don't even know what size this is, just a small one. You'll probably end up breaking half a dozen of them doing this, because when you go in, you'll go in and you'll twist it and they'll snap off. So buy a small supply of small bits, because you're going to go through them. See, they walk pretty easy. So you'll probably be appalled, but I've found the best tool for splitting joints, spot weld joints, is a woodworker chisel. You can see this one is probably cut more spot welds than anything else, but like I say, this one was perfect. That one's free. one's not so free. So never really tried this. I bought these something on the Valiant. I forgot what I bought these for, but I wanted to hog out a hole. So these are just another. I'm going to keep saying this over and over. My tools are at least 30 years old, and some older. This is just an old Mac die grinder, and it's just a 7/16 straight cutter, I believe. So I'm just going to try to go in and try to hog that out a little bit and try to get the rest of the weld that it's just hanging on by a thread. There it goes. It's free. Since this is such a short corner, I'm going to go to a thin screwdriver. The blade would be too wide. And you try to not distort it as much as you can. Sometimes you just have to suck it up, distort it, and straighten it back up later. So it looks like this one. Maybe I didn't quite get deep enough with the cutter. Alright, it's free. So I'll just continue on around with these last three. I won't bore you with those. Be right back. So there we go. I missed one right there. So I just drilled that one out, and the top of this panel is free. So now I just need to go down, figure out the bottom. All right, I hit it with a wire wheel a little bit more, and I figured out how they did this, which is actually pretty simple to cut out of here now. So what they did is they're not spot welds like above. All they did was lay this panel in, spot weld on the top, and there's just about a 3/4 inch bead of weld there, a bead of weld there, a bead of weld there, a bead of weld there. Hopefully they didn't get too far in the corners where it gets hard. But it looks like I just go get a cutoff wheel on my grinder, go right up in here with a cutoff wheel. I think this panel will pop right out. So one thing I'd also like to point out is one of the reasons I really like to do all this outside is because of ventilation. Using the torch on that insulation can't be producing good gases, but because I've got the doors open in the truck, wind is blowing through here, I've got respirators so that I'm not breathing in at least the particulates of when I'm doing this. I'm saving myself some health issues in the future, I hope. Grinding is another place where you can get a little bit lazy with face protection, especially because, believe it or not, there's a lot of that grinding material flying up in the air that you're breathing. Just wear a dust mask once while you do it, and you'll be surprised how much junk is accumulated on that mask. So wear your mask and ear protection and eye protection when you're grinding. So I couldn't have asked for that to go any better in real time. It actually looks like I know what the heck I'm doing. I do need to go get some cutoff discs because, as my friends over at the Southern Polyurethanes Forum know, I'm never restoring another car, which is apparently why I bought two. But I had to use my grinding disc, which cuts a pretty wide swath. So I ended up probably cutting more than I needed to get this out, but since it's so rusted, it would end up needing to be replaced anyway, so there's no real harm done. So I can dig this out, see what the rust looks like back in there, and then start deciding how much of this I'm going to cut out and replace. So now that side's out. I'll try to get to this one today. We'll see. Again, starting to feel a little wiped out. The more I stare at this, the more I think I'm going to end up popping the back glass out. This upper panel here, you can see the spot welds along here. I'll guarantee it folds under, then folds back around, and then it's spot welded against the body here for where the weather strip goes. So take those spot welds out. This piece will come off. Then I can get in behind and fix all this other stuff that's rotted back there. On this side, not a big problem. I don't think I need to really do anything. It's going to depend on how easily I can get all this foam out of here. If I get the foam out and get this side cleaned up, look good, I think we're done. A little bit of rust in here. I don't see any reason to take this all apart though. I think I can clean this up, fix that, be done. This side, on the other hand, by the time I get this out and this out, there really isn't any reason not to just continue on down, pop out some more welds here, take this panel off, take this panel off, go right down through here, take this panel off, take that off, and that's all just going to have to be redone. So, until next time, happy drilling.